We will hear the presentation of Big Bad Boo Studios. Can you hear us correctly?
Yes, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. So you can introduce yourself and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Shabnam Rezaei, co-founder of Big Bad Boo, a BIPOC female-led Vancouver-based animation studio producing and distributing innovative kids content for 15 years. We are a company of firsts. 16 Hudson on TVO Kids, TFO, Radio-Canada, and Knowledge Kids is the first show to have an Iranian Canadian and a Chinese Canadian as main characters in Lily and Sam, best friends chasing adventures celebrating Nowruz and Diwali. The Bravest Knight is the first kids show with a queer protagonist on Hulu, Disney, and CBC Kids. Judge Jody is the first law series for kids where 12-year-old Jody sets up a mock court in her backyard and listens to neighborhood cases. And 1001 Nights is the first to reach children in war zones through UNICEF. These firsts are only possible because of a pluralistic Canada, allowing our entrepreneurial spirit to thrive. Our shows air in 100 countries on channels like PBS Kids, Discovery, Hop, Israel, and VRT. We hire thousands of Canadians and pride ourselves in the diversity and depth of our talent. Despite our success, we face challenges. In recent years, non-Canadian platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Netflix, and others have become primary destinations and go unregulated, negatively impacting the development of Canadian kids. As a mom of 2 young girls, I'm deeply concerned about the media environment they're growing up in. The #1 platform, YouTube, attracts 100 million kids with $36 billion in revenue. In Canada, 87% or 7 million are on it. YouTube's sophisticated algorithms distort discoverability by pushing sensational content to maximize watch time with fast-paced, age-inappropriate videos, toy unboxings, pranks, high-sugar foods, and makeup. Young minds form emotional attachments, becoming friends with YouTubers who monetize their attention with a perfect life, inducing low self-esteem and depression. This cycle of watch, reward, repeat mimics addictive patterns of slot machines manipulating their neurology. This is not a setup we can compete with. If I could use a simple analogy, we allow kids unlimited free candy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with no adult supervision, and our company makes broccoli. Meanwhile, big tech carries zero responsibility, and this stance lacks moral compass, highlighting the critical need for regulatory measures. Our commercial Canadian channels have closed shop with public broadcasters commissioning less and losing audiences. In this new world, the onus of financing, producing, and discoverability falls on the producer. And at home, the onus falls on the mother. Media profoundly affects children's development and their development of normative values. For a 3-year-old, it takes seeing something exactly one time to normalize it. If media portrays negative behavior, these are normalized as the child's core values. By contrast, purposefully educational content plays a profoundly positive role in developing pro-social values, kindness, integrity, empathy, and critical thinking. Media can teach math, literacy, and social-emotional skills, resulting in emotionally healthy children. But only if this content is discoverable. So how can you help? Beyond the solutions laid out by colleagues, regulations on foreign big tech can dramatically improve discoverability. We must demand big tech to 1, fund and carry Canadians' kids' content, allocating a local department to commission and oversee truly Canadian shows according to our educational standards. 2, Prioritize and highlight this content on the main homepage and within the algorithm, view history, search, and subscriptions. 3, devote 20% of Canadian ad money on promotion online and offline, placing print ads on buses and other public places. Beyond this, we must 1, allocate 20% CPE, creating a special fund designated for children's animation. 2, allocate spend for marketing, PR, advertising for producers and broadcasters. 3, identify Canadian content with a maple leaf watermark and identify kids content with an E watermark. And 4, run regular PSAs, watch Canadian, live Canadian, to educate parents about the watermarks, safe Canadian broadcast brands, and how to identify non-Canadian safe kids content. Children's content is not a genre. It is a building block of our free world and indeed democracy. It is like the air we breathe, and we have a duty of care to children, accountable for their health, safety, and well-being. Children are platform agnostic. They don't distinguish between CBC and YouTube. But we as regulators, policymakers, producers, and parents must. Because what they watch now, how they watch it, and who controls it will not only shape who they become, but what kind of country they inherit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm very interested in Judge Judy and her tribunal in her garden. I'm going to be looking for that one. Just to clarify that issues around spending are outside the scope of this particular hearing. They were addressed in the CanCon hearing, so we will focus on the other issues described in the notice of consultation. I will turn things over to Commissioner Paquette, who will lead the question period.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Ms. Rezaei.
Hi.
In your presentation, and also I saw it too in your written intervention, you say that the current market allows digital platforms to give kids unlimited free candy for breakfast, lunch, dinner with no adult supervision, and you say our company produces broccoli. You also state somewhere that your studio has adapted to the changing media landscape by expanding through short-form content, interactive games, and educational programming, but you firmly believe that your best work is achieved through long-form content. So I guess my first question is, can we force children to eat broccoli, or should we try to find another recipe? In other words, is there a disconnect between the content our ecosystem is producing and what young people want to consume?
Yeah, I think, thank you for that question. First of all, I think, the answer to that is, for me, very simple as a mom. It's sort of like saying, if I could let my kids make the decisions about their own nutritional diet, to go back to the broccoli example, would I do that? Would I let a 4-year-old run around the house, picking their own food, deciding when they want to eat and what they want to eat? And when it comes to discoverability, my analogy would be that this kid would have maybe 9 floors of candy with slides that connect them and elevators, and this kid can do whatever they want, and the broccoli's maybe on the 10th floor and there's no stairwell to get there, or if there is a stairwell to get there, the entrance to the stairwell is not there. So I strongly believe that children need guidance. They are at a development stage in their lives where they need adult help and regulation. And what we've done currently in the current market is not regulate the content that these children are exposed to. So, it would be the equivalent of Health Canada allowing pharmaceutical companies to sell drugs without testing them or any oversight. It would be the equivalent of allowing bikes and swim equipment to come into Canada for children to use, but we don't regulate that. we regulate everything that our children come into contact with, except for content. And content is a part of what they consume every day, and it shapes their brains, it shapes developmentally who they become. So if we're not regulating that, we're missing a huge opportunity to be of service to the development of children.
Okay, so it's more a question of access and discoverability than the broccoli itself, if I understand correctly what you just mentioned.
Well, there are two issues. One is that the broccoli makers are no longer able to make broccoli because the support is not there. And so less broccoli is being made. And the second one is so that goes to the funding, which I know isn't part of this. And the second point is discoverability. It's that there's no way to get to the broccoli, even if you wanted to get to it. There are no program managers, as was said earlier today, that curate content for children in the traditional system. Parents no longer understand brands. The young generation of parents that have grown up digitally don't know the difference between CBC and a different channel. And so the old brands have gone out, and we need to educate them on what those brands mean and how healthy they are for their children.
Okay. And you've worked with streamers such as Hulu, Netflix, CBC Kids, you said Disney and others. Can you describe your experience in dealing with major streaming services? Do you feel as a producer that you had some leverage in your discussion and the right tool to negotiate and to make your content discoverable with them?
It's a good question. So we work currently with Hulu on The Bravest Night. And I think the reason that show has done well and was picked up was because it was one of the firsts. It was the first show to have a member of the LGBTQ family be a main character. And that's kind of what our brand is. We like to make shows that other people wouldn't dare make. And when we pitched that show, nobody wanted to touch it. And so we are really proud of having the heart to go after shows that haven't been made, and Canada has made that available for us. When it comes to working with Hulu, they have been wonderful in working with, but the big streamers like Apple TV, Netflix, Hulu, it's very limited the number of pitches we can do to them and the number of shows that they greenlight. And there's no question that those streamers, mostly based in LA and American, would prefer to work with the local LA ecosystem. So some do come to Canada, but again, if our animation studios are shutting down and we're losing talent around animation, and Canada is no longer considered to be the place to come, that business, which is service and original work, might also go away, and that is one of our concerns.
So when you're dealing with these streamers, do you feel what you're negotiating is more shelf space or discoverability of your content?
When it comes to financing the show, we've had to cobble money together to finance shows, which wasn't the case before. So in the case of the Hulu series, we're working also with CBC. In terms of discoverability, because it has a good story, we are able to partner with Hulu and make it a top priority under Pride. We have worked with celebrity actors such as RuPaul, Wanda Sykes. We've taken cast from Kim's Convenience and Schitt's Creek to add to that cast from Canada. And we have to use these cast members as a way to be discovered. So it isn't enough that you're on Hulu and featured for a day or two. You also have to have a whole ecosystem around promotion, running social media, doing ads, doing articles, getting on TV shows to talk about your work. And that onus, like I said earlier, is on the producer, which is very challenging.
And do you find you have the access to the right data to measure and follow the performance of your shows on the platforms?
Unfortunately, we don't. We don't get data from a lot of our partners. And when we apply for funding for a new show to get greenlit, I'll use 16 Hudson as an example, where we've had 4 Canadian broadcasters, plus Shaw Rocket Fund, plus Cogeco, plus CMF put money in. With that show, it takes a long time to greenlight it. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What was your question?
I was asking about data. Once a show
Oh,
is
data, right.
once a show
So
is
when we
available.
apply, yes, when we apply for funding, Shaw Rocket Fund is a great example. They'll ask us for data because they want to know, they want us to submit a discoverability plan and an audience development plan. And within those submissions, we have to bring data to the table. And so it's been a real challenge to get data from our partners. Again, going back to discoverability, we have to show that we can make the show discoverable through all the means that I mentioned. And without that data, it's challenging.
So they don't provide any result or regarding the performance of your.
Very few do. Very few do.
Okay.
The ones that do might tell us on the side. The ones like SRC Radio-Canada, as an example, has given us data. But most of my partners have not given me data.
Okay, I understand. So you suggested in your presentation some measures to foster the discoverability of kids' content, among which you say prioritize and highlight the Canadian kids' content on the main home page and within the algorithm, view history, search, and subscription of the big tech platform. Can you give us a better idea of what you have in mind more precisely?
Absolutely. I think we have so much technology and we need to use it, right? So, for example, we already know if a show is Canadian content, that system is in place. If we could provide a watermark that enables viewers to understand that a show is Canadian content and at the same time run promotions that highlight what a great brand Canada is, that would automatically bump up the view history in a Netflix or a YouTube. There are multiple things to consider on a YouTube. It's not just being on the home page. You have to look at being on the home page. You have to look at the view history, the suggestions, the subscription. So for example, if I subscribe to a show that might be similar to a Canadian show, the Canadian show should be prioritized as a suggestion. So there are mathematical ways in which we could program these algorithms and demand that these big tech companies program their algorithms for Canada.
Okay. And about the home page, when we talk about featuring some content on the home page, I guess there are many, there is a lot of programming available and of Canadian programmers. How do you see that being displayed? Like would it be the platform prioritizing the content?
Yes, the platform absolutely would prioritize the content. I don't know if you know, but yesterday Netflix announced a partnership with TF1, which is a French television station. And these types of partnerships would really help our brands. CBC has a long history, TVO Kids, all the partners that we've talked about. Partnerships with these broadcasters, with these platforms, so that when you're in Canada and you turn on Netflix, it's one of the first channels that shows up. Beyond that, the categorization is important. On Hulu, for example, they have a whole Pride Month and Pride category. So the categorization can be themed, not just on kids and Canadian content, Canadian educational content for kids, but also on events that are happening. Is it Diwali? Is it Persian New Year? Is it Christmas? Is it a particular theme that kids love? Is it cooking shows that we're categorizing? There are really nice ways, and I think it's a great opportunity to ask the platforms and demand that these platforms do that.
Okay. And how would you translate this in terms of regulatory measures? Is there anything more specific? I know that you proposed some ideas in your proposition, but in terms of what could be put in place from a regulatory perspective to manage this featuring and promotion of the content? Do you have any additional recommendations?
I think that we need to tag content specifically for Canadian kids' educational content and Canadian content as a whole. We need to educate the parents so that they're making the right decisions, and that needs to be constant and updated. I think we could look at using AI as a way to look at if there's a lot of video being uploaded, for example, on YouTube, and YouTube says, well, it's too much video, too many videos, we can't do this. Well, let's put AI to work here. AI can look at the filters and the tags that we're talking about. From a regulatory perspective, we can define what those things are. As a producer and someone who works with educational broadcasters in Canada, we already have a system in place that defines what educational content is. We know what that is. We just have to tag it with the technology and then group it and then make sure that our audiences are seeing it as the first thing. When they search, it comes up. When they save it, it comes up. And so that it's a consistent and cyclical discoverability engine that is helping Canadian audiences see the Canadian brands, understand them, and really take pride in what is made in Canada.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to turn to Commissioner Abramson.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us virtually and telling us more about what you do and how it fits into the broader ecosystem. I'm intrigued by your discussion of a CanCon watermark, and I'm trying to think about what that would look like operationally and how we would get there, I suppose. You know, in the past, I've sometimes talked about our role as almost as a data steward in helping seed and operationalize existing industry data ecosystems in ways that can serve public policy purposes. Is that the sort of thing that you have in mind? In other words, do you imagine us sort of designating trusted taggers of Canadian content who would publish open data in a metadata format that could be easily ingested into third-party catalogs? Is that really what you're talking about?
Thank you, Chair Abramson. I think you're starting to understand that I have a computer science degree and I do think like a programmer. And so, yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. When we submit our programming, our Canadian content, to the CRTC and it gets approved as CanCon, there's a point system that we have to observe. And so so we know what that means. We know what CanCon is. We just have to tag it now. We have to tag it and put it into the system and demand that big tech is making it discoverable. The watermark idea is not unsimilar from the watermarks you see when you start a show. You'll see PG-13, 13 plus, general audience. In the United States, back when it was traditional television, there was a watermark called EI, which stood for educational and instructional. And broadcasters had to carry like 30% EI content. So the idea of a watermark is one that is very well known to, you know, the broadcasting system. And like you said, it's just about collecting that data, making that available. And I would argue that as a Canadian producer, we would be very proud to have a Maple Leaf and to turn this on its head. You know, we could run ads on how great Canadian content is. This is a marketing exercise for us as a country to go out and continue to impress the world with what we can do.
Thanks. No, it's an interesting analogy that you make to the violence and so on ratings systems that we have for a few reasons. One of them is it's a quasi-voluntary system, which we've knitted into some of our regulations in ways that perhaps applied better to the traditional than to the online world where we have different jurisdiction. But one of the other things that I like about the analogy is that it's not a centralized database system where we determine the ratings and then publish them emanating from one place. We have a bit of a data ecosystem in place where folks are able to push them to these trusted taggers who certify them and then make them available in a way that's automatically processable by third parties. And it does seem to me that that's a more scalable system than a highly centralized way of classifying Canadian content or whatever it is, which requires constant procurement and all that fun stuff, which is never easy. So thank you for that suggestion, and it's one that we're happy to have on the record. Thank you for being with us. Those are my questions, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you so much.
Thank you very much, and I do echo my colleagues' comments. This was a very interesting presentation, and we thank you deeply for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Madam Secretary?
Thank you.
Oh.
We will take a break and resume at 2:40. Thank you.